Welcome. Before we dive into today's story, I have a small favor to ask that makes a big difference. Please click the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a thing. Caleb Sterling was not merely a man of means, he was an institution unto himself in the sprawling, untamed expanse of the American West. By the year 1888, his portfolio of investments spanned from the glistening steel of the transcontinental railroads to the deep, dark veins of silver and gold mines in Nevada. He moved through the world with the quiet, assured confidence of a man who could alter the economy of a state with a simple signature on a bank draft. His estate, the Sterling Dominion, was a testament to his success, a sprawling paradise of lush grazing lands, pristine rivers, and a mansion that rivaled the architectural marvels of the East Coast. The interior was adorned with imported velvet, mahogany furniture, and art that whispered of high culture amidst the dust of the frontier. Yet, despite the luxury that surrounded him and the high-yield dividends that poured into his accounts daily, Caleb preferred the solitude of the saddle to the stuffy air of boardrooms. He was a handsome man, with sharp features carved by the wind and eyes the color of tempered steel, usually hidden beneath the brim of his Stetson. On this particular afternoon, the heat of the sun was a heavy blanket over the territory, shimmering off the horizon where the red earth met the endless blue sky. Caleb was inspecting the northern boundary of his property, a section of land rich in timber and fresh water, assets as valuable as gold in this arid climate. He guided his thoroughbred stallion, a beast of immense power and pedigree worth a small fortune, toward the path that winded along the Crystal River. The river was the lifeblood of the valley, its waters cool and clear, originating from the snowy peaks far to the north. Caleb sought a moment of respite, a brief escape from the pressures of managing an empire that employed hundreds of souls. As he approached a secluded bend in the river, sheltered by weeping willows and ancient oaks, the sound of splashing water reached his ears. It was a gentle, rhythmic sound, distinct from the rush of the current. Curiosity piqued, Caleb slowed his horse to a silent walk. He did not intend to intrude, but the isolation of the spot made the presence of another person unusual. He maneuvered through the brush, the leaves parting to reveal a scene that would sear itself into his memory forever. Rising from the water was a woman. She was not just any woman. She was a vision of ethereal beauty that seemed to command the very elements around her. Naya, a healer of the local Apache tribe, stood waist-deep in the glistening water, her back initially turned to him. Her long, raven-black hair cascaded down her back like a waterfall of dark silk clinging to her skin. As she turned toward the bank, moving with a grace that defied the resistance of the water, Caleb felt the air leave his lungs. He was a man who had negotiated with senators and tycoons without blinking, yet here, faced with this raw, natural elegance, he was rendered breathless. She wore a tunic made of soft, tanned buckskin that was currently resting on the riverbank, and as she stepped out, dripping wet, she quickly wrapped herself in a large, woven blanket patterned with the vibrant colors of her people. The sunlight danced on the water droplets on her bronze skin, making her glow with an inner fire. When she looked up and locked eyes with him, there was no fear in her gaze, only a fierce, intelligent curiosity. Her eyes were dark and deep, holding centuries of wisdom and the spirit of the land itself. Caleb sat frozen on his horse, his heart hammering against his ribs like a wild drum. He had seen beauty in the salons of New York and the parlors of San Francisco, but nothing compared to the woman standing before him on the mud of the riverbank. She was the embodiment of the untamed beauty he loved so much about the West, but she was also regal, carrying herself with a dignity that far outstripped any socialite he had ever met. "I apologize," Caleb managed to say, his voice rougher than usual, tipping his hat instinctively. "I did not know anyone was here. This is the edge of the grazing lands." Naya tilted her head slightly, assessing him. She recognized him, of course. Everyone knew Caleb Sterling. He was the man who built fences, but also the man who respected treaties better than the government did. "The river belongs to no man, Caleb Sterling," she said, her English perfect, tinged with a melodic accent that fascinated him. "But your horse looks thirsty." The tension in the air was thick, charged with an electricity that had nothing to do with the looming thunderstorms of summer. It was the magnetic pull of two souls colliding. Caleb dismounted, his boots sinking slightly into the soft earth. He led his horse to the water, but his eyes never left her. "You know my name," he stated, standing a respectful distance away. "I am Naya," she replied, tightening the blanket around her shoulders, though the summer heat rendered the cold water refreshing rather than chilling. "My brother is Talon. We watch the movements of the cattle." "Talon," Caleb nodded, recognizing the name of the respected warrior. "I have heard of him." "A man of honor. And you are the man of gold," Naya said, a small playful smile touching her lips. "Do you find gold in the river today?" Caleb looked at her, really looked at her, and felt a shift in his universe. "I think I found something far more valuable than gold, Miss Naya." The compliment hung in the air, bold and undeniable. Naya did not look away. In a world where lines were drawn in blood and barbed wire, a bridge was beginning to form between the tycoon and the healer, sparked by a chance encounter that left the most powerful man in the territory completely disarmed. Caleb Sterling could not focus on his ledgers. The rows of numbers representing cattle sales, mining yields, and railway stocks blurred before his eyes. All he could see was Naya's face, the water glistening on her skin, and the intelligence in her dark eyes. 2 days had passed since the encounter at the river, and the memory burned brighter with each passing hour. He was a man accustomed to acquiring what he desired through wealth and negotiation, but this felt different. This was not an acquisition, it was a gravitational pull. He decided to ride out again, this time towards the foothills, where the Apache encampment was located. He told his foreman he was scouting for new irrigation channels, a plausible excuse that allowed him to survey the land near Naya's home. As he rode, the vastness of his estate reminded him of the responsibility he carried. His wealth was not just for luxury, it was a tool, a weapon and a shield. He found her gathering herbs in a meadow dotted with wildflowers, not far from where the reservation land bordered his own. Talon was there as well, standing guard on a ridge, his silhouette sharp against the sky. Caleb approached slowly, hands visible, signaling peace. "Mr. Sterling," Naya said without turning, sensing his approach, "you are far from your mansion." "The mansion is cold, Naya," Caleb replied, dismounting. "I find the air out here much more invigorating." Talon descended the ridge, his movements silent. He eyed Caleb with suspicion, but also a grudging respect. Caleb had never allowed his men to harass the tribe, a rarity among the wealthy landowners of the region. "Sterling," Talon acknowledged with a nod. "Talon," Caleb returned the nod. "I come with no business today, only curiosity." "Curiosity about herbs?" Naya asked, holding up a bundle of sage. "Curiosity about the woman who knows the land better than I do," Caleb admitted. Over the next hour, a conversation unfolded that bridged the gap between their worlds. Caleb spoke of the pressures of the market, the changing face of the nation, and his desire to build a legacy that lasted. Naya spoke of the rhythms of the earth, the healing properties of the plants, and the importance of preserving the spirit of her people. They found common ground in their love for the land. Caleb was captivated not just by her beauty, but by her mind. She understood the value of things that could not be bought. However, the tranquility of the afternoon was shattered by the arrival of a rider bearing the crest of the region's bank. It was a messenger from Victor Harrington. Caleb took the letter, his brow furrowing as he broke the wax seal. Harrington was a vulture from the East Coast, a banker who saw the West not as a home but as a carcass to be picked clean. He had been lobbying for development rights that would allow for aggressive strip mining, rights that often ignored existing land treaties. "Bad news?" Naya asked, sensing the shift in Caleb's demeanor. "It's Harrington," Caleb muttered, crushing the letter in his gloved hand. "He's petitioning the territorial governor to resurvey the boundary lines. He claims there's an error in the old maps. He wants to designate the river valley, your valley, as eminent domain for a new mineral processing plant." Naya went still. "That land is our winter home. Our ancestors are buried in those caves." "He knows that," Caleb said, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. "He doesn't care. He sees profit where you see sacred ground. He sees a high return on investment. You see a home." Talon stepped forward, his hand resting on the hilt of his knife. "We will fight him." "You cannot fight lawyers and politicians with knives, Talon," Caleb said, his tone serious. "Harrington fights with paper and ink. He fights with money." Caleb looked at Naya, seeing the worry clouding her features. The thought of her losing her home, of her being displaced by a man like Harrington, ignited a fury in him that was hotter than a forge. He realized then that his fortune was meaningless if he could not protect the things that mattered. "I won't let him take it," Caleb vowed, stepping closer to Naya. "I have resources he can't dream of. I have the capital to buy the land twice over if need be, or to tie him up in legal battles until he goes bankrupt." Naya looked at him, surprised by the intensity of his promise. "Why would you do this? It is not your fight." "Because," Caleb said, his voice softening, "I am beginning to think that everything I have built was for this moment, to stand between you and the world." The connection between them deepened, no longer just an attraction, but an alliance forged in the face of adversity. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of violet and gold, Caleb knew he was entering a war. But for the first time, he was fighting for something more precious than railroad shares. By the way, I'd love to know where you are watching our stories from. Please leave your location in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more. The conflict escalated quickly. Victor Harrington was not a man used to being told no, especially not when the potential profits from the proposed mineral plant were projected to be in the millions. He arrived in town a week later, his carriage polished black, contrasting with the dust of the frontier. He set up court in the finest hotel, buying drinks for the local politicians and spreading rumors that the savages were hoarding gold on their land that belonged to the American people. Caleb Sterling countered immediately. He didn't just use his wealth, he weaponized it. He sent urgent telegrams to his legal team in Washington, D.C., instructing them to file injunctions against Harrington's survey teams. He bought the local newspaper's advertising space for the next month, using it to publish editorials about the importance of honoring treaties and the environmental value of the river, a forward-thinking concept that surprised many. But Harrington played dirty. One evening, smoke began to rise from the edge of the Apache lands. Hired thugs had set fire to the winter stores of Naya's people, trying to provoke a violent retaliation that would justify military intervention. Caleb saw the smoke from his balcony. He didn't wait for his foreman. He saddled his horse and rode hard, the animal's hooves thundering against the earth. When he arrived, chaos reigned. Naya and Talon were directing the tribe to put out the flames, using blankets and water from the creek. Caleb threw himself into the effort, his fine suit ruined by soot and sweat. He worked side by side with Talon, hauling buckets, stomping out embers. When the fire was finally extinguished, the damage was done to the supplies, but the people were safe. Naya found him leaning against a charred post, wiping ash from his forehead. "You came," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I told you I would," Caleb replied, breathing heavily. "Harrington did this," Talon said, approaching them. "He wants us to attack the town. If you attack, he wins," Caleb said firmly. "He wants a war so the army will clear you out. We will not give him a war. We will give him humiliation." "How?" Naya asked. "Tomorrow is the governor's ball," Caleb said, a plan forming in his sharp mind. "Everyone who matters will be there. Investors, politicians, the press. Harrington plans to announce his project there. I'm going to ruin him in front of them all." "I want to be there," Naya said. Caleb looked at her. It would be scandalous. An Apache woman at a high society ball? It was unheard of. But looking at her regal bearing, he knew she would outshine every debutante in the room. "Then you shall be," Caleb said, taking her hand. "Wear your finest. I will arrive with the most beautiful woman in the territory, and we will show them that the future of the West isn't in destruction, but in unity." The night of the ball was suffocatingly hot, but the ballroom was cool, filled with the scent of expensive perfume and champagne. Victor Harrington was holding court in the center of the room, boasting about his new venture. "Progress, gentlemen. That is what I bring. The removal of obstacles," Harrington declared, raising a glass. The doors swung open. The room fell silent. Caleb Sterling entered, looking every inch the cattle baron in a tailored tuxedo, but no one was looking at him. On his arm was Naya. She wore a gown Caleb had commissioned from the finest seamstress in San Francisco, rushed by train, a deep red silk that matched the earth of her home, but she wore her traditional turquoise jewelry, a statement of her identity. She looked like a queen. Harrington sputtered. "Sterling, what is the meaning of this? Bringing a savage into this hall?" Caleb's voice rang out, clear and authoritative. "Careful, Harrington. You are speaking of the woman I intend to court, and you are speaking on land that I just bought." Gasps filled the room. "What?" Harrington froze. "I bought the bank that holds your loans, Victor," Caleb said, pulling a document from his jacket. "And I bought the deed to the mineral rights you were trying to claim. It turns out the previous owner preferred immediate cash over your empty promises of future shares. The land belongs to the Sterling estate now, and I am gifting it in perpetuity to the Naya's tribe as a protected trust." Harrington turned pale. His financial leverage was gone. He was overextended, and without this deal he was ruined. Caleb had outmaneuvered him, not with violence, but with the sheer crushing weight of superior capital. Naya stepped forward, her gaze piercing Harrington. The land is not for sale, it never was. The fall of Victor Harrington was swift. With his credit lines frozen by Caleb's acquisition of the bank, he was forced to retreat back east in disgrace, his reputation in tatters. The threat to the Apache lands vanished as quickly as the smoke from the fire had cleared, but the real story was not the financial victory, it was the union that followed. The scandal of the ball turned into the romance of the century. The local papers, initially skeptical, were won over by the dignity of Naya and the steadfast devotion of Caleb. Months later, the wedding took place not in a stuffy church, but by the river where they had first met. It was a ceremony that blended two worlds. There were fiddles and drums, roasted beef and traditional stew. Wealthy investors from the east rubbed shoulders with Apache warriors, realizing that their prejudices held no weight in the face of genuine respect. Caleb stood under the willow tree, watching Naya approach. She wore white buckskin adorned with intricate beadwork that told the story of her people. He felt that same breathlessness he had felt the first day. "You saved us," Naya whispered as she reached him. "No," Caleb corrected her, taking her hands in his. "You saved me. I had a fortune, Naya, but I was poor. I had land, but I had no home. You gave me a purpose." They exchanged vows that promised not just love, but a partnership. Caleb used his influence to advocate for indigenous rights, setting a new precedent in the territory. Naya brought a wisdom to the Sterling estate that saw it flourish in harmony with the land, rather than in spite of it. As the sun set on their wedding day, casting a golden glow over the valley, Caleb and Naya stood on the porch of the mansion, looking out over the vast empire that was now theirs to protect. They were the most powerful couple in the West, not just because of the gold in the bank, but because of the love that bound them. They had proven that different worlds could not only coexist, but could strengthen one another. And as Caleb kissed his bride, the wind whispered through the canyon, a song of peace and prosperity that would last for generations. If you enjoyed this story of love and triumph, please remember to like the video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring more history to life. True wealth is not measured by the gold in your pockets or the land you possess, but by the courage to stand up for what is right and the wisdom to recognize love when it appears, regardless of the boundaries society tries to impose.